Hello, welcome to one of my videos. In this one, I'm going to be showing how I do a color change, two row color change in a chunky beanie. This is a basic beanie. I call this a medium chunky because I'm using a 4-ply and a DK. They all have the same format for the color change, 2 rows of each color. It doesn't really matter where you do it. This one has 2-row color change, and first this color, and then I change to another color, and then I use that one to continue. So this one has the 2-colored color change, but I've kept the same color for the top and the bottom. And it's just introducing a band here. How many rows you do is up to you as well. I've just more or less kept a 3-row band before moving on to the what you could call the solid color afterwards. These beanies here have been done either with a 6mm or a 5.5. I didn't have the 6mm, so I started a whole lot of them in the 5.5 and then went to buy a 6mm yesterday because I felt that the 5.5 was just a little bit too tight for this medium chunky. I am using a DK. Now this is a DK on the thinner side. It's not a thick DK. And this is a 4-ply. And this 4-ply has the colors blending in it. It's in a cone. So a 0.5 kilogram cone. It's a UK brand called Marriner. And this is the Marriner Mermaid series. As I'm now in South Africa, the yarns that I'm using in these particular beanies are KISMET yarns, and most of them are lollipop, and I think there is 1 or 2 that are not, but I'll make another video that shows just the colors I'm using, the color ranges I'm adding. I bought some more balls yesterday, so now I have 2, 4, 6. I have 7 different colors that I'm using. The acrylic, as is the Marriner yarn. So I've knitted a total of, it's 7 rows, but because I count this V down here, which is actually the cast on loop, comes to 8 loops. It's 2, 4, 6, 8 loops. This is the front or the right side of the work. It doesn't really matter where you add the yarn, but I'm adding it on the right side. I've been knitting with the DK and the 4-ply, and because the 4-ply is in 1 cone and I don't have extra, I'm going to basically separate these 2 now, and I'm going to pick up the other color. So I will drop the blue, and for 2 rows I'm going to use the pink. I keep a tail that's long enough for later on to work away with my darning needle. If you're more comfortable, you can make a loop around here, which later on you can undo just to hold it in place, because otherwise sometimes that first loop can actually, the first loop on the stitch here on the needle can actually gape. So you can just do that. Look, one, it's not a knot, it's just tied on once, because you want to undo it later on when you sew where your ends. So I've worked with the blue, so now I need to pick up the pink and drop the blue. Try and get the blue to be underneath. You might notice after a few rows that your yarn balls do get a little bit tangled. I just persevere because I know that in the end I'm going to be cutting the one after the interchanging rows. When they're all done, I cut the one color and then I just pull it out. So if they get a little bit tangled, I just let it do its thing. So now we've tied on the color onto the working, this was the working yarn, the blue. You're going to drop him, and now your working yarn is going to be the pink. Push it in a little bit, just to keep it in place. And then you're going to work your first stitch. Mine happens to be a knit stitch, because that is for my invisible edge, which you'll see in my other videos in the basic beanies. And then I purl 2 and I knit 2, and it's as easy as that. You've changed colors, and I will continue working across the row until I get to the other end. I will turn around and I will come back. If you're working with 3 colors, and this one is not showing 3 colors, then I would change at the end of this row. Sometimes I do, but I don't need to with these ones because of the mottled effect. I don't feel I need to introduce that many colors so quickly. But if I'm working with a plain color and I want to interchange, then I will at the end of each row be picking up another color to work. I'll make a video on that. It won't be right now because I'm busy working with this series. So when I get to the end of this row, I'll show you what I would have done if I was introducing a new color. You see, sometimes it does that. Can be a bit annoying. Just pull out the pink. Pull out that one. Because I have a basket full of colors next to me, and they're not, they're in the original balls. I haven't yet put them onto a wool winder. I have a 50-gram ball wool winder with me. So what I do is I work away the yarn until I know I've worked at least half of the ball, and then I will use the wool winder for what's left. But I try to leave my balls in the basket as they are, because I don't want them to collapse in on themselves and make a big mess. So here I could introduce a new color, and I would do it exactly the same way as I introduced that color. And then what I would do at the end of each row, I would change colors. But we're not doing that with these beanies. We're working 2 rows per color. These are pony needles. I'm very, very happy with them. So it took me a week to find a place where I could actually buy them. I don't know the stores around here. And this absolutely marvelous haberdashery. I bought yarn there a week ago, and I tried to look online to see if they had an online presence, and they didn't. So I went back to that store, and there they had all the circular needles I could possibly want, and they had the ponies. So I was very happy, and I added a couple of packets of different sizes. I don't often work with chunky, so I was missing some of the sizes. And so I'll come to the end of this row. You can feel that blue yarn is annoying me. Let it get out of hand there. Okay, so I've come to the end of the row. As you can see how annoying this is. because I was making a video, I wanted to knit to the end, but normally I would have stopped and sorted this out before it got to this point. Look at that. It's a big no-no. Because, you know, stitch in time saves 9. By not doing this in time, I've almost created a mess, catastrophic mess here. So now this is where I try and sort it out. So the blue put on that side, pink on that side, and the 4-ply here. So each one is in its own place. Let's see what I've done here. What have I done? See, that was a problem. Thinking, got to get to the end of the row, got to get to the end of the row. Look what I've done. Because what I basically want to do is I want to get the pink out. And sometimes I just have to twist my work like a little bit. So what I'm showing you is how you mustn't let your work get twisted too much. See, normally I like my yarns twisting around when I'm working with 2, because they almost basically are plying themselves. They're basically creating a new yarn with the twist, but not when I'm working with 3. So okay, I've sorted it out. Pink guy, he's going to go to the back. I'm working with the blue, come to the front blue, and there we go. And they're all next to me in a basket. So turn the work. Pink guy, we're going to leave him there. And we're working with the blue and the 4-ply. Little tail, you can go down, little tail. So the blue was worked 2 rows beforehand. So that's going to create a little tiny loop in the back. It will be a little loop, but that'll be on the inside of the work. When I sew up with my invisible seam, I'll be using this stitch here, and all the other ones will be inside the beanie. You can see video on how I sew up my invisible seam on the beanies. I've got my blue, which is now going to be my working yarn, and I've got my mermaid 4-ply, and I do the first stitch. The pink one needs a little tug, so you give it a little tug to the pink. And off I go. Do a few stitches and then just look back. Make sure that you have worked that 4-ply neatly, that it's not gaping. Because you can tug the pink one to make it smaller, but you can't tug the 4-ply because he's already now worked into that row. So you've got to make sure that he's not gaping. See, he's gaping a little bit there, you see there? That's not ideal. Luckily it'll be inside there, but it's not ideal. What I sometimes do is when I'm working away the tails, so I'll go across this row and I'll come back and I'll change the color again. So let me show you one of the finished beanies. I'll try and find out where my seam is. There it is. So I've worked away the invisible seam because it's a 2-2 rib, 2, 2. On the inside, you can see these little loops. Those are the little loops from changing the colors over. So sometimes what I do when I have my tail, I look carefully, and if I see one of them is gaping, I with my chenille needle, which is a pointed needle, Let me see if I can find them because there's something behind me. I don't know where they are. But what I'll do is when I work away my tail, if I see one's gaping a bit, I will catch him and pull him in just so that he's anchored nicely. And then I'll work my tail all the way up. So that's a way of almost like saving the inattention, because I wasn't being attentive here. And so that first one is gaping, and that's not good at all. So yeah, when I work away, I'll use my tail just to anchor that little guy there. Now for a beanie, I'm doing 8 here. If it was for a bonnet, I would prefer to have my color change somewhere else, because I don't want to show any of the seam. This is a beanie. I wouldn't want any of the seam here to be showing. Like if it's a bonnet, I prefer to have a much larger single color before I actually have the turnover. So the little bonnet would have a turnover like that, and I would not want the color change there. I would want the color change higher up. So I do quite a large section of one color before I actually have the color change, so that the cuff of the bonnet is in one color. You can see a little bit here. When it's turned over, you have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, sorry, 6, 2, 4, 6, and then you have 4. So the invisible seam is better on a bonnet and on a beanie than it is on a bonnet, but I use it anyway. There we go. So I hope that's been helpful. It's just a little tiny video to show the color changes. If you change the color at the end of every row, then you do not have that problem with the loops being created on the back here. The loop is basically because the color has been carried up 2 rows. But if I made one row like this, and at the end of the row I introduced another color and another color and another color, at the end of each row there is no yarn being carried up. Also, what's interesting, when you have 3 color changes, it creates quite a nice pattern, but it's more effective when used with solid colors. I mean, you can use it with this, it'll be very subtle. I might as well show it. I'm here anyway. I would make another video, but there's no reason why I don't show how I can do that. So I showed when there's 2 rows, and now I'm going to show color change at the end of each row using 3 colors. So you would finish this row, and then you would add your new color here. Let's get something sharp that will really stand out. So I'm going to use this one. See, he's still quite big, so I won't be putting him on the spinner. Put him back into the basket. Okay, so my pink is behind me. Put the red in front of my chest while I take away the blue. Put the blue behind me as well. So the pink and the blue are behind there. And the 4-ply mermaid is going to be a working yarn. So I'm introducing the new color. Tie it on, keeping enough for a tail later on to work away the tail, and slip it all the way up. the screen one you're working on. The first stitch will be a purl. Tuck everything nicely in. Give it a good little tug. And start. Making sure that my mermaid is nice and tight. Give the blue another little tug just to keep it down. Do a few stitches and look back to make sure that it's nice and snug. Yes, I'm happy with everything. And then I work across with the third color that I've introduced. If you are making a blanket or a shawl, to not have to work away all those tails, you would cut them long enough that you could later on tie knots and you could actually have a fringe. So you'd be generous, you'd give yourself maybe, if it's a shawl or something, you'd give yourself a 30 centimeter, 12 inches of working tail. And then you could color change at the end of every row, and you would cut the yarn you've just finished with, 30 centimeters, 12 inches. You'll introduce your new color, also leaving a tail of 12 inches. And you would work your shawl. You could add as many colors as you want. If you had 30 balls of yarn, different colors, and you're working across your shawl, you would add a new color for every row, and it could be stunning. And you'd have no tails to work away. And there are videos on how to make knots on the edges of shawls. Not in my playlist, but there are. So you would secure those tails very well. So now you see here, I've done 2 rows. So instead of coming back with the blue, I've come back with the red. And I need to go and get that pink. My working yarn is going to be the pink. The red is not going to be my working yarn anymore. So I need to put the red behind, and I need to fetch the pink. Now this is where tangles can happen. Got to get the red and the blue behind my knee. Got to bring pink forward. Get my cable untangled. Get my working yarns in place. Nice. That mermaid is twisted in there. That's the problem, is if you've got your mermaid twisted in. So you can see where if you were having a working a shawl or something, and you could cut the end of each row, you could cut this. See, my blue is on the other end, and now he's causing problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work one row of pink, and at the end I'm actually going to cut that pink, and then I will have another row of blue. The blue will come back, and I will continue my hat in the red. So the pink is going to be, hang on, the pink's going to be working, sorry, the pink's going to work with the mermaid. Some people prefer to actually have small balls. As I said, if I was working with, if I had been using this yarn a lot and I had a small ball, then you just pick up the ball and you can actually feed it through and you can sort out your knots like that before they happen. But I don't want to touch my balls if possible. So give it a good tug. Just checking, yes, everything's fine. Get that little red, that was my last working yarn, was a red. Give it a nice little tug, and off I go. Oops. Bad peek at the camera and dropped my mermaid. Oops. If I wanted to, I could have just one row of this red, but I'm actually quite enjoying the way it's jumping out like that. So as I said, I probably might even use that for the top parts of the hat instead of the pink. I wasn't planning to introduce just another color, a third color, but I just wanted to show. So now I've come to the end of the row. And what is the next working yarn? It's the blue. So I'll be dropping the pink. I'll be picking up the blue. So the pink I can see, you see here, it's really, he's quite twisted up with the blue. But for instance, I could have the option of cutting the pink here. If not, I need to get enough of this out to work with it. Don't want the pink to make a knot, so I'm just going to keep on pulling out this. See how it wants to make a knot there. So I said if I had yarns in a little ball, I would just pick up my little ball. I'd feed them through here and there and put them away. But that'll happen soon enough, because once I've worked these yarns a lot, they will be put onto the wool winder, and I'll have my little balls that I'm I'm longing for. Okay, the pink is there. I picked up the blue. I just need to make sure that my mermaid, my 4-ply, is going to be tight. Make a stitch or two, and then I'll go back and pull the pink. Okay, go back, give the pink a tug. Just make a few more and I'll show you. So keeping that edge neat as far as possible. When I'm sewing up my invisible seam, I'll be using the 3rd loop, 1, 2, 3, and not the edge loop. The edge loop will be inside and it'll be free floating. This is the loop that I use for the invisible seam. So all those color changes and everything will not be visible, and they'll not be parts of the sewing up. And then I can use these tails, as I said, to catch any of the free floating loops that I think might be a little bit too loose.